This build is the product of the D&D Daily team mixed with Fledgling, one of our amazing patrons. Put our minds together to come up with something truly special. This build is going to focus on using wind to increase your allies' movement speed and lower your enemies' movement speed, making it so we can run circles all around them. Today, I bring to you the Tempo Typhoon. In order to pull this build off, we're going to begin by going Aarakocra. Aarakocra not only allows us to have flying mobility, but also gives us the Gust of Wind spell. Normally a spell that isn't used often, but here it has some cool options because it lowers our enemy's movement speed. It also sets us up for this wind flavor that we're going for, and I think that's probably the most important thing. As for our leveling structure, we're going to take our first 5 levels into Fathomless. We're then going to take 6 into Creation Bard, and from there, we have some options we'll discuss later. As for our stat array, we're going to be going into Charisma first. We're then going to be going into Constitution second, and Dexterity as our tertiary. Now normally Dexterity would be your secondary, but because we can fly, I wanted to focus more on concentration than I did on AC. So to begin with our Warlock flavors, I want to begin with some flavor. Whenever you think Fathomless, you're probably thinking about the ocean. It is fathomless after all, but it's not the only fathomless thing out there. The sky is also fathomless. And I like to think that this character, instead of having a water theme, has a wind theme. So we're going to have a wind tentacle instead, and our patron is going to be lost to the skies somewhere in that vast abyss. These 5 levels in Warlock give us a ton for slowing down our enemies beginning at level 1. Here we get Tentacle of the Deep, which again we're flavoring as air, but when it hits an enemy, it's going to reduce their movement speed by 10 feet. Once we get to 2nd level, we get Invocations. Not only are we getting Agonizing Blast, we're also getting Lance of Lethargy that also reduces an enemy's movement speed by 10 feet when they hit him with Eldritch Blast, which is going to be our primary cantrip, surprising no one. I like to think about these Eldritch Blasts as like these high-powered airstreams that we're launching, and it hits them and it creates this pocket of air that makes it difficult to move around or blows against the direction they want to move. Something cool there. At level 3, you get options. Whatever pact you want to take, you can take here. You could take a familiar that looks like a bird to kind of match you, or you could take the Pact of the Tome to get more cantrips. Whatever you want, really, sky's the limit here. Do whatever you feel best. Once you hit level 4, hopefully your charisma is odd. If not, just bump your charisma. But if your charisma is odd, you get to take the Telekinetic feat. The Telekinetic feat matches this build perfectly because we get to move our allies 5 feet or attempt to move our enemies 5 feet, either slowing them with wind or increasing our allies' movement speed with wind. So either way works. At level 5, we get an extra invocation, which I like Grasp of Hadar because we can fly, so we can go down, pick up an enemy 10 feet, drop them so it does a bit of extra damage, and it knocks them prone. But more importantly, we get an extra Eldritch Blast shot per turn, so we can output more damage now. Also at level 5, we're getting a signature spell of this build, which is Summon Shadow Spawn, specifically the Despair version. This has an aura that reduces our enemy's movement speed if they start their turn within that aura by a whopping 20 feet. What's really cool is this combines well with our Grasp of Hadar. We can actually pull enemies into that 5 feet of radius that the Shadow Spawn emits, and thus making them lose 20 feet of movement and 10 feet of movement from our Lance of Lethargy at the start of their turn. So if they have a standard movement speed, they have 0 movement speed at the beginning of the turn. And once you combine the Tentacle with our Shadow Spawn with our Lance of Lethargy, we have 40 feet of movement we can take away from a single target, but we also have the ability to spread that out as we see fit. So we have the ability to control bigger groups of people than just single targets, potentially even increasing our ally speed with something like Telekinetic. So it's going to feel like our party can just run circles around our enemies because you exist. I think that's pretty cool and a unique take. Now, once we hit this point, we're going to move over to Bard. Bard is going to introduce us to a secondary playstyle that is essentially a supporter. This begins with spells like Silvery Barbs and Dissonant Whispers or Command. Fantastic spammable first level spells. Bard's got them. We're also going to get the incredible Bardic Inspiration, which we're going to love to pass around. And once we hit level 3, we're going to be going into the College of Creation. This is going to improve our Bardic Inspiration, but really why we're going into Bard is for College of Creation 6. So in between those levels, we just get the fantastic 3rd level spells that come with being a Bard, including the Slow spell, which I think is thematically perfect for this build. So now we have a different concentration than the Shadow Spawn to hit large areas of people, and this particularly works well if they're very spread out. Shadow Spawn works well if they're kind of more bunched up, so now we have more optionality. We're also going to get the ability to restore our Bardic Inspirations on a short rest, and that's huge. That's a big moment for Bards to just let us spam out those Bardic Inspirations like crazy, something we're going to love to do. But really while we're here is for the Creation Bard's level 6 feature, the Animated Item. This item allows us to create essentially another summon, but it's concentrationless, and this summon also has an aura. In this aura, it decreases enemies' movement speed by 10 feet feet, but it also increases our allies' movement speed by 10 feet as well. And because this can work with our shadow spawn, this actually increases our shadow spawn's speed as well as both of them reducing whatever enemy they were next to. So this increases our field of being able to control enemy speeds and ally speed significantly, as well as giving us just another fighter on our side. It's very, very powerful. Something to note is that we want to target the largest item we can, because the larger it is, the more area that aura is going to cover. So just keep that in mind when you're choosing your item. This item also has a +4 to its strength, which means it's pretty good at tripping people, especially when you consider that we can combine it with our Bardic Inspiration. And what's cool is on the same bonus action we use our Bardic Inspiration, we can also command our item. So we can give our item Bardic Inspiration, it can use its ability to try and trip someone, and then if it needs to, it can actually add its Bardic Inspiration. So we can get some pretty consistent trips. Now, depending on how your DM rules it, once you trip them, they can be losing tons of movement speed, and they may have 0 movement speed to stand up. Some DMs are going to say, whatever, if you reduce their movement speed to 5 feet, then it only takes 2.5 for them to stand up. I personally don't rule it that way. I think it takes 15 feet of movement to stand up, and if they don't have it, they can't. Check in with your DM, but in any case, if they have 0 movement speed, I'm pretty sure they shouldn't be able to get up. This is basically the restraint effect. They can't move, they're going to have disadvantage on all their attacks, and you're going to have advantage on all your melee attacks against them. And it's something that you can do from long range, which is something you usually can't do with the restraint effect. So there's a lot of power there. From here, we can choose to go more into Bard or more into Warlock. Personally, I'm going to be going more into Bard. I love magical secrets, and I'm definitely going to be picking it up here. And just Bards are powerhouse casters, so I want to get more and more of those spell slots, as opposed to Warlock's more attacks. Some notes about flavor here is, out of combat, I want to take proficiency and probably expertise and performance to perform aerial air shows. Combination of flying with our wind abilities to move things about. I think it all comes together really cool for a unique Bard flavor. I really like this build because when I think about Bard, I think about auras more often than not. I think about them playing music, and depending on the song they're playing, it gives your allies a different buff. And I really feel like this, although it's not doing it via those mechanics, what it's doing is slowing your enemies down to a snail's pace and increasing your allies' speed. So it makes it feel like your allies can just run circles around these enemies, can be wherever is the most advantageous while keeping them in the most unadvantageous position. I think that's a really cool flavor, and it feels Bard. It feels actually Bard to me. Mixed with some cool Fathomless air flavor, and we have ourselves a cool combination of mechanics and fun flavor. What I would love to know is, what would you guys have done given the same build prompts? Let me know in the comments down below. As always, if you have any challenges for us, let us know in the comments down below. You might just get into a video. Again, I want to say thank you to Fledgling for being a massive part of the creation of this build, but I also want to shout out some other Patreons, Spook Whoop and Jonathan S. All 3 of you, we really appreciate your support. It means the world to us. Thank you so much. With that, my friends, I hope you have yourselves an incredible day, and I'll catch you on the next one. See you then.